But even though that's true, isn't it also the truth that often we don't understand why we do what we do? Even Paul himself, the Bible tells us in Scripture, he struggled with this. Paul spoke about his life and he said, hey, I don't even get what I do sometimes. He says, there are things that I know I should do, and yet I don't do it. And then there are things that I know I should not do, and I don't even want to do them, and yet I do them. He seemed to be a prisoner trapped in his own mind, in his own body, in his own soul. Can we relate? And he says, oh, that someone would free me from this battle. And he knew that he would eventually be free from this battle through victory that comes through the Lord Jesus Christ. There's a time coming where we, if we have that faith, will be with him in heaven. It says that we will see him as he is, and he will be in the midst with us, and everything will be different. And even these battles that you and I have every single day, they'll be a thing of the past. It's even hard to comprehend that, really, when we think about that. The way we think now, the battles we have now that we've had all our life, to suddenly be free from that tension, that's going to be amazing. And once we get there, it's going to be that way forever, for eternity. But until then, what's going on? Now, last week we began to look at 3 highlights from the book of Deuteronomy, and we looked last week at if we had a love problem. Do we truly love the way we should? Do we truly love the Lord our God with all our heart, our soul, and our mind? And what does that encompass? I will tell you that that issue in and of itself is in the background and sets the stage for where we're going today. And that is, we'll bring up this title right now, the 2 choices that we have to make every day. Because we really choose. We really do. Each day, each moment of our day, multiple times a day of our life, we are choosing between not a myriad of choices like you think, but really only 2. Obey or disobey. Really comes down to this. There's obedience and disobedience. That's really it. There's an old hymn that you can find in your hymnal. It says, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, I believe is the words there. But to trust and obey. Yes, trusting is often involved in obedience because often how God calls us to obey him does not make sense or even follow the plan that you and I would want to plan and do. But we obey or disobey. Every day we have that choice. We really do. Let me ask you as we get started with this, how have you been doing on that as a whole? Do you think, when you evaluate yourself, do you tend to obey more or disobey more? If we were to get a ranking, if we were to kind of tally it up throughout the day, and the times that we know yes or no, this is what God says, this is what not says, what would be the percentage? All the time, some of the time, most of the time, very little of the time. Where would you be on the chart? And I wonder if we were to take an average. Wouldn't that be interesting if we took a secret survey in here and we started talking about different issues in different areas of life? Maybe there's some areas where you score higher. I think there is for all of us. There's some areas where we score naturally higher because there are things that don't really matter that much to us. And then there's some areas where we just miserably score lower. What are those good areas and what are those tough areas for you? More than likely, just so you know, there's a spiritual battle all the time, right? There is. So understand, by the way, for those of you who say, well, I would have stayed with what God told me to do, but the devil made me do this or the devil made me do that. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. You chose to do it. Let's accept responsibility right off the bat, okay? You chose to do it. He may have suggested it. He may have put it in front of you because he knows that's your weakness, but you and I choose every time. There's never a time when we're made. In fact, every time we sin, which is missing the mark of what God has said yes or no to do, Every time we sin, guess what? That was your choice. Nobody else's. Don't look around. Don't look to your neighbor. Don't look behind you. Don't point the finger. If you want to point the finger, you take your hand, you turn it around, and you point it right back at you because you're the one. You want to know who's responsible? Take out your phone, bring up the camera, and take a look at yourself right there on that phone. Get ready to take that selfie and put it as your wallpaper because every time you see that face, you'll know you're the one. You're the one that's making that choice. I do it. You do it. We all struggle with it. So we're going to look today at why. Why do we still struggle with it? And how do we start having, through God's help, more often some victory over it? Would you like to win a little bit more in this area? Who would like to win a little bit more in this area? Now, if you're saying no, not really, that means you really enjoy your sinning. You really enjoy your disobedience. Right? That's part of the problem. Part of the reason we don't win more in this area is because we just love it too much and we don't really want to win more. In fact, some of the things that God is telling you to obey more in your life, you've already said many times, I just don't see myself being able to do that. I don't see myself stopping doing that, stopping engaging in that, stopping saying those things. I just don't. It's always been me. It's always been part of me. In fact, I almost wouldn't even know if it was myself if I wasn't that way. And so you're so accustomed to it, you're saying, God's just going to have to accept me how I am. And he does, but he has a better version and a much closer relationship with you that he wants. Are you willing to step into it and obey him? Or are you just content to stay where you've been? That's the question. Let's look at some things together this morning. We're going to move on. Deuteronomy 30, verse 19, reveals to us that we choose, you and I choose every day to obey or disobey. It started with this morning, by the way. You made a choice this morning. By the way, those of you who are in front of me right now, I compliment you. I commend you on your choice. The alarm clock went off this morning, or the time went off, or maybe you woke up naturally and you had a choice. Do I stay here in this bed, or maybe I was still tired? I know my alarm woke me up, okay? So if that hadn't happened, if I decided to ignore it, I could have probably still be sleeping right now. Getting nice rest. You say, well, Pastor Jay, of course you couldn't do that because you had a responsibility. You had to be here because who else would be standing up here right now if you didn't arrange for someone else to take care of the sermon? But guess what? I would choose to be here anyways. In fact, when I can't be, it bothers me extremely. But that's a choice we make. You made a choice. So I commend you. You could have stayed in bed. You could have stayed in bed. Some people are in bed right now. Some people may be watching right now from in bed. In fact, this is being broadcasted out who knows where. It's on Faith Points TV. We show it on YouTube, different places. It's possible right now that you're watching me from bed. And that's fine if that's the only place you could be. I'm glad you're watching. But let me say this. God also wants you, he says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together with other believers. So he wants you to get up. He wants you, when possible, to get out. And he wants you to fellowship. That's part of what he says. So if you're doing that this morning, or if you did it but now you're watching this recording, I commend you. You obeyed. To stay in that bed when we don't need to make that choice not to go. Every time people do that, that's not obeying, that's disobeying. We choose, though. We make that choice. The words that come out of our mouth. Let me ask you about that. Profanity. You know, I have so many people trying to give me reasons why profanity is okay. They try to use Scripture all the time and tell me, well, where does it say that this particular word? Well, I'll tell you, the Bible does tell us to avoid all appearance even of evil. The Bible tells us not to be saying words that are not uplifting, but everything that comes out of our mouth should not be corrupt communication, but it should be edifying. It should be words that build up. So ask yourself, are those words that you're using for the intention of building up or for the intention of being angry or tearing down or lashing out or all those type of things? Ask yourself that question. Okay, we can try to justify it all we want, but if I stood up here in front of you this morning and said some words from the front that you say during the week, you might be shocked. So let me ask, why is it okay for you? We choose to obey or disobey. The tongue, the Bible tells us, is extremely powerful. It's one of the most powerful members of your entire body. You think it's the legs, you think it's all these. No, it's the tongue. The tongue can literally destroy, and it can also encourage. It's amazingly powerful. And how we use it is we're choosing to either obey him or disobey him. What about our actions? Every day we have these choices to make. Our service, our time, you name it. Even following the laws or not following the laws. I've seen some of you drive. I don't necessarily drive that great either. And I will tell you the times when I lose it on the road because somebody tests my temper on the road. That's my weak spot. I've told you this many times. I do weird things on the road when I'm not happy. And it's true. I'll say things I shouldn't say, usually with no one else in the car, but God's in the car. Can't tell you how many times I have to say I'm sorry. And God kind of says, well, if you're sorry, then stop. Or you're not really sorry, right? We had that discussion with children, right? And you had that too? Child comes along, oh, I'm sorry. Well, if you're sorry, you won't keep doing it. True sorrow produces a change in action. God tells us to repent of things and to turn. Well, if you're truly sorry over your sin, you'll have a change in action. Otherwise, we're just giving him lip service, just like when we told someone sorry and we didn't really mean it. So we choose. Deuteronomy 30, verse 19, I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now, choose life, so that you live and your children may live. In other words, he's saying, choose the right path that I'm laying before you. This is in the context of different commands that he's going to give in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is full of commands, if you look through it. Full of things to do and not to do. And he's saying, hey, when you choose the right path, it blesses your life and it makes your life flow better. And even live longer. How many people today die young? For no reason. How many young people have you heard that say, well, I don't even see myself getting to be 30 years old? Why? And yet often they're right. When I was younger like that, I never even had that thought. Why would that be the case? It's choices, it's decisions that don't lead to life but lead to destruction. And understand that the choices that you and I are making every day not only affect our own life but also affect the lives of those around us as well. Let's move on to the next point that we're going to make this morning. Obedience. When it comes to obedience, let's understand, it's a matter of desire. Looks like I got a typo here on spelling. But we don't just fall into sin. James 1, verses 14 and 15. What does James 1, chapter 14 and 15 say? It tells us, if you were to look up the whole verse, it says, hey, when you fall into temptation, don't even for a second, I'm paraphrasing here, but it says, don't even for a second say, well, it's because I'm being tempted by God. People blame God for their disobedience. We do it a lot. Well, God, if you were so powerful, you wouldn't have allowed me to be in that situation to begin with. And yet you and I both know that when you want to do something, even when it's wrong, you'll find a way. Isn't that true? Maybe you've done this before, it's been laid out to you, or you've laid it out to a child or a young person, and you've even told them ahead of time about what might happen if they continue on a certain path or make certain decisions. And you tell them with the intention of saving them from themselves and making some of those wrong decisions. And you know what you've seen them do quite often? They go ahead and do it anyways. In a determined state. And you just shake your head. But guess what? You and I, we've all done that. It says this is when sin takes place. When you and I sin, which we do, this is why. We are drawn away by our own desires and enticed. We choose self over God. This has been the truth from the very beginning. It's about focus and where we're focusing. So you may get frustrated in your life and say, why do I keep messing up in these particular areas? Why do I keep disobeying in these particular areas? What is going on in those moments of decision when I disobey? Well, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Let's take Eve in the garden, for example. Because it's always the same. So Eve, she's in the garden, right? And there it is, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil with this fruit on it. We don't know much about it. We just know that it had been set there, and God basically had said what when it came to the garden? How restrictive was God when it came to the garden? How many things did he say to stay away from? One thing. Oh, can you imagine that garden for a moment, just how amazing it must have been? Big, vast, every resource you could possibly think of. Even the animals got along. Everybody got along. It was wonderful. One thing, just one thing. You could have everything else. There were tons of trees there with fruit and food and everything that they could possibly want. And they had free, 100% non-restrictive access to all of it except for just one. So what? It's just one. But I know what we all think even to this. Why that one? What's with that one? So all of this access that they have, all of it. Chuck, you wanted to say something really bad, didn't you? It's the pear on the ground, yes. I can always count on you, Chuck. Thank you. Okay. So they're going after all of these trees. And it's just this one. And so the serpent comes along and says, has God said you cannot eat of all the trees of the garden? Which, of course, he didn't even come close to saying that. And she said, no, he said, you can, just not this one. And you can't even touch it, which God didn't even say, but that would be a wise thing to not even get that close. But notice what the Bible tells us was in Eve's mind what led up to her eating. What we don't see in Eve's mind is a thought about God. No, it says when she saw that the tree was what? Good for food. In other words, her focus became on what she was seeing. It wasn't on God anymore. The first thing was the lust of the eyes. So the focus went off of God and went on to the fruit. Ooh, that looks good. How many things in life does God tell us stay away from, but they look good? So in those moments, here's the question. Do you look more at God, or do you look more at what looks good? The more you look away from God, and the more you look at that, the more tempting it becomes. Do you think, by the way, that Eve would have taken of that fruit if she physically saw God standing right next to it? No way. Because God would have been in view. But the more the evil one takes us off our eyes off of God, and more on what it is that we lust after, the closer we get to disobeying. She saw it was good. And it was desirable to make one wise. She looked at it. She thought about the benefits. She thought about what it might get her. She thought about what she might feel like, that she was missing out on something. The evil one comes along and says, he just doesn't want you to be like him, knowing good and evil. You're missing out. The pride of life, all of this. And so the more she focused there, it would have stopped. It would have not happened if she would have turned her focus back to God. Every time you and I mess up, that's exactly what happens. We know of God, we know what God said, but it turns more to, but, and we look, and we look, and we look, and we look. And we have this instant gratification type of thing in our thing, right? In our society. What did the evil one, what did the deceiver, what did the serpent say to her? He goes, well, you won't surely die. In other words, you're not going to take this fruit and drop dead right now. And us modern Christians with the grace of God, you know how it works, right? Oh, God's going to be unhappy, but it just looks so good. He'll forgive me. We'll make it right later. It's not like I'm going to be struck down with lightning right now if I disobey. I'll just do it. And then I'll say I'm sorry later. And somehow it'll be okay. Little do we know how much of the blessings and everything that we rob ourselves from as we continue to disobey. We have no idea how much of the closeness of God that we don't experience because our fellowship continues to be strained as we sin and we disobey against Him. We have no idea how much of what we're really missing out on that's just better than that garbage in comparison that we just settled for. We have no idea, and yet we do it over and over again. He says we're drawn away by our own desires and we choose self over God. What I want right now is, every act of disobedience is saying what I want right now is more important than what God wants for me. Every time we do it. It's not merely breaking a rule, it's placing ourself on the throne. It's saying what I want at this moment is more important than what God is telling me. Now, I know I sound condemning when I'm telling you that, but I know all about it because I do it too, all the time. Every day, just like you. So that's how I know. I wish I could tell you that I just don't have this problem anymore, but we all do. We all have this struggle. Why is it a problem to place God on the throne, or ourself on the throne instead of God? So let's move forward here. How do we start changing it? Matthew 5:6 tells us, let's change our hunger. Now, some of you are sitting in this pew this morning, and your stomach has growled since this sermon began. So loud that the person sitting near you actually heard it. You wondered if they heard it. You said, wow, I heard it. I felt that. They were polite. They probably didn't say anything. In fact, it's possible that when they heard your stomach growl, it was only a matter of minutes before now their stomach growled as well, because they just started thinking about hunger. It's amazing how we say we're hungry, considering how much we eat. I know I don't want to get into a sensitive subject here, but how much we eat. Oh, I'm so hungry. When did you last eat? Oh, it's like 3 hours ago. Any little twinge of anything, we go, oh, we're so hungry. Do we really know what it's like to be hungry? I mean, like starving hungry. I got to tell you, I don't think I do. By the blessings of God and the grace of God, I've always been able to eat too much. What I consider hungry is just mild compared to what hungry is. And Jesus said, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. You know why you and I disobey God so much? It's because we're not hungry enough for Him. We're not hungry enough for Him. The table is set with the greatest provisions and blessings ever, but we're content with a happy meal. We're content with some fried chicken nuggets, which hardly even have any chicken in them. The nutritional value of chicken nuggets, it's literally parts. It's chicken parts that are discarded and put together. Pasted together, and then they stick a bunch of fried batter on it with horrible, unhealthy oil, and then you shove that in your body. Why am I saying that and ruining it for you? Because it's garbage compared to what's good. And that's what we do. Over and over again, we settle for garbage and compare it to the best. But we're used to it. Everyone does it, and we go, that's the way it goes. What if we were to hunger and thirst for the real thing? Hunger and thirst for something that's better. For absolute righteousness, which comes from God. And He says that when you hunger and thirst for this, and you really long after it, you'll be filled with it. That's where our focus needs to go. We don't do that. We're always just trying to toe the line. How far can I go without it being really bad? How much can I stretch it without it being considered really sinful? How close can I get to the street? Can I balance myself on the curb? How close can I get to the sinful street without actually stepping on it? How can I do a balancing act? How can I just kind of be on the wall and ride the fence instead of saying, no, I want to go to the palace. I don't want to be on the outskirts of the fence. It's where our focus is, and that's why we struggle so much. It says true victory over sin doesn't come by willpower. See, this is the problem with sin. Let's talk about food again. Let's talk about a delicious pizza with extra cheese. Your favorite cheese. What is it? Mozzarella, Parmesan? What is it? What's your favorite cheese? Jack? What is it? Your favorite cheese? Lots of cheese, your favorite toppings. What was that? Pepperoni. That's Brandy's favorite topping. And you start thinking about this pizza and the breadsticks and the sauce and all the different things that go along with it. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, but I shouldn't have that. I shouldn't have that. I'm going to refrain. I'm going to refrain from it. Here's the problem. You still love it. You still love it. So all you're going to do, I'm just going to use willpower, because when I eat too much pizza, I get fat and I get unhealthy. So I'm just going to use willpower. And that works until someone in your house or someone at your family gathering brings it. You know how it is. You're trying to be good. You're trying to do all that stuff. You're trying to stay away from the ice cream and all the different things. And then somebody in your family goes, I feel like a shake right now. And you're thinking, if I have one, I'm going to look like a shake. But you know, and what do? You wouldn't have done it on your own. But the problem is you still love the pizza. You still love the shake. Even though you're trying to stay away from it, you're trying to do the willpower, but you still love it. But what if you became convinced? What if you became convinced that the next time you ate those 3 pieces of pizza, it would lead to killing you? It would actually poison you to the point where you would double over 2 hours later and be so nauseously sick that if it didn't kill you, you'd wish it did. Then how much would you want it? Probably nowhere near as much, because you would think about it much differently. Some of you in here have had that before, where there's been foods that you really liked, and one day, maybe it had nothing to do with the food, but one day you ate it and you got really sick. And I don't want to get too disgusting, but let's just face it. You experienced that food again and again in a way that you didn't want to experience it. And from then on, every time you see that food, every time you look at that food, every time you even catch a smell of that food, you get transported right back to that awful day. And you just don't look at it and like it the way you used to, because that's the way you now associate it, right? Well, that's the problem. We don't do that when it comes to our sin. We just go, oh, I shouldn't do that because God isn't happy. Well, what if we started seeing it, ask God to have us start seeing it differently and go, this literally makes me spiritually sick, and I don't get to be the person that God has called me to be because I keep poisoning myself with all of this. Then we start to see it differently. It's not about just creating a willpower. It's about developing a greater desire for God. And it's about me saying, every time that I do this, I don't get closer to God. I don't get more of God like I really want. Because the more we hunger for Him, the less room there is for sin to take root. That's really the key. So let's move on here. Back to Deuteronomy 28, 1-2. If you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all His commandments that I command you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Now, is that a good promise or not? It's a good one right there. I mean, it's right there in the Word. It's not some positive talk I'm trying to give you here right now. This is right there in the Word. Right in black and white. Faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all His commands. And then He'll set you above. He'll lift you up. You don't have to do it. I had this conversation with someone actually by text just a couple hours ago. God moved in my heart to send it to them. They told me they had something else that they needed to get to and something else they needed to do. And so they weren't, even though they wanted to make it today, they weren't going to be able to make it. And yeah, they know that happened last week too, but all of that. And so this keeps happening. And so God moves in my heart to nicely and to lovingly message them something back. They actually gave me the message last night, but then He moved in my heart to message it this morning. And I said, there's one thing you need to understand, and I feel that God wants me to tell you. You're looking for a breakthrough. You're looking for a major change in your life. You're looking for something to really happen. But you've got to understand, putting God number one first above everything else is how that will happen. The other things, the Bible tells us when we seek Him first and His kingdom, and his righteousness, then all the other things are added. We don't try to go after the other things first and then find out what time is left for him afterwards. It's a game changer. And so this is what it tells us. It says, careful to do all his commands. Now, when he says all his commands, how much of them does that encompass? Pretty obvious, right? All of them. We don't get to pick and choose. We don't get to pick and choose. Oh, these are easy for me. Okay, I'll choose those. Oh, that command? Oh, no, I can't do that. And we compartmentalize. Many believers today compartmentalize their life. They obey God here, obey God here, obey God here, obey God here, not here. All of them. I mean, how did that work? Hopefully it didn't work in your household growing up. When you went home and there was one glaring thing that you were told to do or not do, and you disobeyed in that area, and you said, oh, but I did this, and this. Did that work? No, it didn't. We're supposed to do all of them. We didn't get to pick and choose. So he says, be careful to do all of them, not just the easy ones, not just the ones that don't bother you, all of them. And then he'll set you high. Blessings shall come. See, when blessings from God come, this is what happens. We get things, and things happen in our life from God that we could not do ourselves. That's amazing. You already know what you can do. You've tried it. You've already got those results. I want the blessings that come from God, because those are things I can't do. Those are things I can't produce. Those are opportunities I can't manufacture. He's a lot richer than I am. He's a lot more powerful than I am. He's much more knowing than I am. He's much wiser than I am. He's able to do things abundantly above that which I could even ask or think. So why would I settle for my own doing when it's so much less? It says not only will these blessings come upon you, they'll literally overtake you. If you obey, just obey the voice of the Lord your God. And that includes doing some things that you would not do otherwise. Last part we're going to look at today. I believe this is the last part. Our choice. Oh, there's one more part. Cool. Do we choose self over God? We've already asked this question. Exodus chapter 20. This is right in the beginning of the 10 Commandments. What was God's first thing that he says? You shall have no other gods before me. Do you know there's a reason that's right in the beginning? Because if you mess up on that one, you basically break all the rest of them that come right after it. Without this proper foundation, we cannot possibly get any of the rest of them right. The moment from the throne of our life, God is replaced by anything, including our own lust, our own will, our own desires. That's when we choose self. You know that commandment that we looked at last week? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And it says, love your neighbor as yourself. I've had so many people over the years that go, well, that's my problem. I don't really love myself. Even those who say they don't love themselves when you understand it. Because we're obsessed with ourselves, whether we like ourselves or we don't. It's still the primary focus of our attention. And so, whenever we're not putting God number one and we're focusing on what we want to do at that moment, we're putting another God before him. Every single time. Last point we're going to look at today. the practical call now. How do we do this daily? How do we start changing things daily now that we've looked at these scriptures? Notice what it says here. It's a daily decision. Don't miss that point. It's a daily decision. We don't worship God only on Sundays. We don't worship God only when there's church activities. It's a daily decision. And when we talk today about that desire for God and how to want more of Him and to focus more on Him so it's less on ourselves and it's less on our desires and all those things, we need to feed that. Let's feed that desire for God or our desire for self. That's what we choose every single day, one or the other. So how do we cultivate a hunger for God? These are basic. We go over them all the time. But have you noticed that things that we go over all the time we don't necessarily do? Have you ever noticed that? Like, for instance, going back to the diet, we know what we should eat and what we don't eat. How often do we follow it? Not very often. Prayer, it's a must. It's a must. If the last time you prayed was when we bowed our head last week, it's not going to work. It's a must. In fact, you might be here and go, and when you bowed your head last week, I either wasn't here or I didn't even bow my head. I was looking around. It's a must. Any relationship needs communication. Any relationship. Can you imagine? I'll take Robert and Maria over here. How often do you see each other? How many days of the week? Every day. How often do you say at least something to each other? Every day, right? Can you imagine if they walked in here today and I asked that question, they go, haven't seen her since last week. Haven't said a word. We'd be like, what? Doesn't work that way. Relationships don't work that way. Every day. So the relationship, we say, oh, I want to have a hunger and a thirst after righteousness. Oh, yeah, and I'll see if I can at least get to church twice a month. And that's going to be about it. Are we kidding ourselves? Prayer is a must. Every day. The Word. It's powerful. The Word is powerful. It is so... Even if you don't read well, your phone will read it to you. Don't let that stop you. It'll literally, there's a setting. We'll show you where it is. It'll read it to you. You watch videos on your phone. You listen to all types of nonsense stuff on your phone. I know, because even I do it, and I've seen you do it, and I've heard you do it. Well, there's a lot of good stuff with the Word on the phone, too. Same device. It's available 24/7, 365. And it's powerful, the Word is. And it changes us. Worship. It is so easy to worship now. So easy. YouTube's on, Spotify, all these different things. There's worship songs, there's worship music all the time. There's K-Love on the radio. It's like constant. It's all over the place. What are you listening to during the week? And is that really benefiting you? Is that drawing you towards God or more towards the body of the person that's walking down the street? Which one is it doing? I don't mean to be blunt, but I'm just being realistic, right? It's the truth. What are you singing? Would you sing that in here? Here, I'll give you the mic. Come on up here, sing those lyrics right now. Would you do that? Worship. It can bring us closer to God, but what are we taking in? Community. This is a community of believers. It's very important. Very important. You need to be a part of it. It's extremely important. It's part of what encourages one another, not only when people encourage you, but it's also encouraging to you to be able to help and to encourage others. There's often times when the biggest encouragement to me is not necessarily something that you said to me to help me. It's some way I'm able to make a difference in your life. Okay, community is important. And serving. That doesn't sound very appealing, but it is. To be able to serve the living God who was willing to do everything, even be obedient to the point of death on the cross, who was willing to give everything for us. Anything we do in comparison is amazing. To have that privilege. And it's not always not tiring, but it's amazing and it's rewarding. These are things that we should choose every day when possible. Every single day. Put that in your checklist for the day. A lot of people have their little to-do lists and their checklists for the day or for the week. Did they win the day? Did they lose the day? Did they accomplish these things? All of that. These should be on that list. Every single one of these should be done every day. Not out of obligation, but because this is what produces a much happier and better and blessed life. And the more we would do that, it'd be amazing the change. If Robert and Marie never talked to each other, hardly ever, all week long, how much better would they get along? How much closer would they be if they did what they're actually doing and they actually see each other and talk to each other in hopefully a positive way, I'm sure, every day? Makes a big difference. Huge. So as we get ready to bow our heads, and actually we're going to have communion in just a moment. Perfect timing. Perfect timing for communion. Communion, what is it supposed to be? I'm communing with God. I'm being thankful. I'm doing this in remembrance of Him. All this kind of thing. Where are we really today? God tells us during the time of communion, let it be a time where you allow Him to examine our hearts. I don't know where you are, but you do and God does. And this is not being said to make you feel bad. This is being said to make you hungrier and thirstier for righteousness. So as we take a communion and we reflect on what the Lord Jesus Christ was willing to do for us through His body and through His blood, it's an amazing time for us to commit and say, Lord, you've spoken to my heart today. In my daily habits, I want them to change. I want to get these things in here. I want to make sure that I'm doing this. I want to hunger after you more. I want to thirst after you more. I want to commit my life to you more. And as we do that, He'll change us in amazing ways. Will you have faith to trust Him in that?